Meet ORIA, the world's first immersive audio interface and monitor controller. In this video, we're going to take an in-depth look into the ORIA Desktop Software, deep diving into its extensive features and settings. This is the main screen of ORIA's desktop app. At the top left of the ORIA Desktop app, you will find the monitoring panel. Here we can see input source and output selection. Using the Input Source Select drop-down menu, we can choose which inputs feed ORIA, whether using the USB interface or optical ADAT ports. Below this is the Output Select drop-down menu, letting you select which speaker outputs the system or profile is using for audio, whether using the analog surround outputs, either of the dedicated stereo output pairs or the AES digital outputs. Next, the main output volume control is found here alongside global mute and dim controls, mono and polarity. This allows you to check your mixes for phase and mono compatibility at the press of a button. Selecting polarity reverse will also activate mono simultaneously. Lastly in this panel is the global delay control, also known as lip sync delay, useful for bringing audio into sync with an external video source. The global delay allows for up to 100 milliseconds of additional delay, but if you are not using a workflow with video sources, we recommend keeping this at 0 for minimal round-trip latency. Moving over to the metering panel, we can see the output level metering, including pre and post metering options. Pre shows us the audio levels straight from your DAW or the renderer, and post mode shows us audio levels after calibration processing and master volume control. The metering panel can also be expanded, enabling you to use the expanded metering window independently of the main app window. The expanded metering window provides you with an expanded view and more detail, allowing you to keep a closer eye on your metering. Below the metering panel, we have the room panel. Here we can see our 9.1.6 speaker array as if viewed from an aerial position. This is a visual representation of your speaker positions in the room, with each speaker being identified with a circular speaker icon, all positioned around the user, as denoted by the white user icon found in the center of the section. You can use the speaker icon to both mute or solo that specific speaker. To mute a speaker, click on the speaker icon to toggle mute on and off. When a speaker has been muted, it will fade to grey in the room view to denote a mute status. To solo a speaker, use the shortcut Shift and click on the speaker icon to solo or unsolo the speaker. When at least one speaker has been put into solo mode, the selected icon speaker will change to have a stroked outline and look like this. If any speakers are in solo mode, all other speakers are muted. Whilst a speaker is in solo mode, a user cannot mute any other speaker or speaker group. It is worth noting you can also solo multiple speakers simultaneously using the Shift and click shortcut as shown here. If audio is playing and being sent to a speaker, the speaker icon will have a wave animation denoting that sound is coming from that speaker. So if there's no wave, there's no sound. This is useful if checking where a signal is coming from, especially when checking things like downmix setups and using less than the full complement of speakers. If you would like to remove all active solos simultaneously, simply hold Option or Alt and click any soloed speaker. This will remove all active solo states across all speakers and speaker groups. The same is applicable for removing all active mute states. Simply hold down Option or Alt and click any muted speaker. To the left of the room panel, you will find the Groups panel. As you can see, color coding allows you to quickly identify a group of speakers, and these are organized by their position in the room. These groups are the front speakers, surrounds, subwoofer or LFE, and the height channels. When a group is muted, the speaker's icons within that group will become grey in the room panel to denote that these speakers have been muted. When a group is soloed, that group's speaker icons will change in the room panel to have stroked outlines. If a speaker or speaker group is soloed, all other speakers are muted. If any speaker is soloed, a user cannot mute any other speaker or speaker group. However, multiple speakers or groups can be in solo mode at the same time. Next, we have the Profiles panel. Profiles are the heart of the ORIA control philosophy. When we select a profile, we are simultaneously selecting the choice of speakers assigned to that profile alongside all of the calibration parameters for every channel, all in one button press. This allows you to quickly switch between profiles which have been created for different monitoring formats or target modes. A total of 32 profiles can be stored on ORIA itself. It is worth noting that although profiles are stored directly on ORIA's hardware, they are controlled using the Profiles panel or the Profile button on the front of the unit. At the top of the Profiles panel, there are 4 favorite slots, and when using the dedicated Profiles button on the front of ORIA, a tap of the button will cycle through these 4 favorite profiles. If you have more profiles than the 4 favorites, non-favorite profiles are presented in a list below the dividing line as shown here. The order of profiles can be changed by selecting a profile in the menu, holding down the mouse button and dragging the profile to the desired position. When dragging a favorite profile to another favorite profile slot, these 2 profiles will directly swap places, allowing you to quickly reorder your favorites by preference. When dragging a non-favorite profile from below the dividing line into one of the favorite slots, the selected profile will replace the profile in the numbered favorite slot where the cursor landed. The pre-existing favorite profile will move down below the dividing line and will then be found at the top of the non-favorite list below. When dragging a favorite profile from above the dividing line down into the non-favorite list, the selected profile will land in the non-favorite list where you drop it. The non-favorite profile at the top of the non-favorite list will then move up into the lowest slot of the favorites list, shuffling any remaining favorite profiles upwards. When dragging a non-favorite profile to another slot in the non-favorite list, the profile will land where you drop it, and non-favorite profiles below will shuffle down 1 space. There are 2 types of profiles: manual profiles and Sound ID reference profiles. The Sound ID reference profiles are denoted with the Sound ID icon. You are not required to work with one or the other exclusively. Both manual and Sound ID reference profiles can be imported into the ORIA Desktop app and switched between at your leisure. Sound ID reference profiles that are created in a trial period have a 60-day time limit and will no longer load once expired. Once a Sound ID reference profile has expired, the corresponding Sound ID icon will turn red. However, it is worth noting you will be prompted with a warning message 1 week before your profile is due to expire in order to give you sufficient time to prepare. To create a new profile, click the plus button found in the top right of the Profiles panel. Name your profile and hit Save. You are now ready to start entering calibration parameters. Profiles can either be created manually or using Sound ID reference from SonarWorks. We have more videos on our YouTube channel showing these processes in detail. To duplicate an existing profile, right-click on a profile name in the Profile panel and select Duplicate. A copy of the profile will appear at the bottom of the profile list. To rename a profile, right-click on the profile name in the Profile panel and select Rename. A cursor will appear enabling you to edit the text. Type the new name and press Enter when done. To delete a profile, right-click on the profile name in the Profile panel and select Delete. A window will appear asking you to confirm your deletion. When you make changes to a profile by muting or soloing speakers, changing the EQ parameters, level trims, per speaker delay or bass management settings, and you either go to close the app or change to a different profile, a dialog window will appear prompting you to save these changes. Save commits these changes before changing to the new profile. Don't save discards changes before changing to the new profile, and cancel keeps all changes and halts the profile change process. If you have made changes to a profile, a save icon will also appear next to the profile name, allowing you to save your changes manually. To do this, press this save icon. Wait whilst the profile saves, and once complete, a green tick icon will appear, denoting that the changes have been saved. It is worth noting, when you save a profile, you are directly saving it to ORIA's hardware. Now we have covered the main control panels, let's take a look at the desktop apps menu bar. Firstly, there is a button to change between light and dark modes, useful for accessibility. This is signified by the dark and light circle. Next is the global bypass button, which quickly turns off all the calibration so you can hear everything ORIA is doing to calibrate your speakers and room, disabling the EQ on every speaker as well as all the level trims, per speaker delays and bass management settings. The setup button opens the setup panel, and the room view moves over to make space for a new section, and this is where we set our calibration features. On the room panel here, we can see that a speaker has now indicated that it is selected by an expanded speaker icon, and correspondingly, all of the controls in the setup panel will affect this specific speaker. We can see here at the top left of the setup panel confirmation of which speaker we are currently working with. Here in the middle of the setup panel, we can see 8 bands of EQ, a high shelf and a low shelf. Each one of these EQ bands can be moved by clicking on its visual indicator, holding down the mouse button and dragging the dot around. Alternatively, once the band has been selected with the mouse button, we can adjust the 3 controls below: frequency, gain, and Q. We can adjust these controls by clicking and dragging with the mouse button, or we can also double-click on any one of these controls to manually input a value if we already have specific values that we wish to input into the calibration fields. The EQ can be bypassed by clicking the EQ bypass button. Clicking the undo button will step the EQ back by 1 value, and the redo button will restore the input values sequentially. If you are using a profile imported from Sound ID reference measure, the EQ panel will show the resulting EQ curve as imported from Sound ID reference, but the EQ controls will be locked, and below the EQ will be the SonarWorks calibrated EQ text. At the bottom of the setup panel, there are 3 further controls for speaker calibration. The first control is trim, which raises or lowers the level of this speaker by up to 12 decibels in increments of 0.1 decibel. Click and drag this control to either add or remove trim from this speaker. Alternatively, double-click on the control to input a numeric value. The second control is delay, which delays the signal from this speaker by the defined amount of time. This is useful in time aligning speaker signals to arrive at the listener from each speaker at the same time for optimal immersive imaging. The delay control has a range from 0 milliseconds to 75 milliseconds in increments of 0.01 millisecond. Click and drag this control to add delay to this speaker signal. Alternatively, double-click the control to manually enter a numeric value. The delay control also has a separate on button to engage the delay. The third control is crossover, and this is for configuring bass management. When engaged by clicking the on-off button, bass management is now enabled for this speaker. This means that audio frequencies that had been sent to this speaker channel below the defined frequency value seen in the control will be removed from this signal path and instead redirected to the subwoofer channel. This is important in audio systems where the individual speakers may not be able to faithfully recreate lower bass frequencies, and so redirecting those lower frequencies to the subwoofer may provide a more optimal experience. Click and drag this control to define the crossover frequency, below which audio will be sent to the subwoofer and above which the audio will be sent to the defined speaker channel. Alternatively, double-click on the control to manually enter a frequency value. At the top of the setup panel are controls for this speaker, starting with mute and solo. Click mute to disable output from this speaker. The mute icon will become light and the corresponding speaker icon in the room panel will become dark grey to indicate a speaker mute. Click on the solo button to engage solo mode for this speaker. The solo button will become light, and in the room panel, the corresponding speaker icon will become a coloured outline to indicate speaker solo mode, and the wave representing audio will also become the colour of the respective channel. If solo mode was previously engaged for another speaker or group of speakers, the icon for the currently selected speaker will become outlined in addition to any speakers already in solo mode. The copy button will copy all of the EQ, trim, delay and bass management settings for this speaker into memory, and the paste button will overwrite the EQ, trim, delay and bass management settings from any channel where these settings were previously copied. The reset button will restore the EQ, trim, delay and bass management to factory settings for that specific channel. The bypass button at the top of the setup panel will disable all the calibration DSP applied for this particular speaker, including the EQ, trim, delay and bass management. The EQ bypass button below keeps trim, delay and bass management active, so you can compare the speaker signal with or without EQ processing without affecting the rest of the calibration controls. The system button at the top of the ORIA Desktop app lets us look under the hood at the more advanced settings for connectivity and control. Starting in the general panel, monitoring preferences is where the dim settings can be changed to define how many decibels the monitoring volume is decreased by when pressing the dim button, either in the desktop app or on the front of the ORIA hardware via the function button. Click and drag the control to change the amount from -40 decibels to 0 decibels. Alternatively, double-click the control and manually enter a value in the text field that appears. To the right, there is the headphone outputs section. Here, we can define which of ORIA's outputs are assigned to each of the headphone outputs. For each headphone output, there is a drop-down menu. In this drop-down menu, you can choose from the left and right outputs of the USB input, which duplicates the front left and right channels of the stereo or surround speaker outputs without the calibration features, or you can choose USB 1718 or USB 1920, which are available through your DAW as separate respective outputs. At the bottom left of this panel, we can choose what the function button on the front of ORIA will be used for. The drop-down menu can select between monitor volume dim, return to reference level, mono, which sums together the left and right channels, and polarity, which inverts the polarity of the right channel to enable monitoring for phase consistency. At the bottom right of the general panel, we can select the preferred clock source. This changes which digital clock ORIA will use to synchronize with additional digital audio equipment. Internal will use ORIA's internal clock to synchronize and will provide ORIA's clock signal on the word clock output. Selecting ADAT as the preferred clock source will use the optical ADAT ports to receive clock signaling. This requires the externally connected equipment to be sending a clock signal across ADAT at the same sample rate that ORIA is set to use. When an ADAT connection is not available, a red light will appear and ORIA will use its internal clock. When an ADAT signal is received but clock synchronization is not possible, this light will turn orange. When an ADAT signal is received and ORIA has locked to the external signal, the light will turn green. Selecting word clock as the preferred source will use the BNC word clock input to receive clock signaling. This requires the externally connected equipment to be sending a clock signal over BNC at the same sample rate that ORIA is set to use. When a word clock connection is not available, a red light will appear and ORIA will use its internal clock. When a word clock signal is received but clock synchronization is not possible, this light will turn orange. When a word clock signal is received and ORIA has locked to the external signal, the light will turn green. The renderer panel is for connecting ORIA directly to the Dolby Atmos renderer, both to use the downmix button on the ORIA hardware to cycle through the different downmixing format options, but also so that the Dolby Atmos renderer can feed back information to ORIA about which downmix format is in use. We can see the downmix status in both the ORIA Desktop Apps metering panel and on the ORIA front screen when pressing the downmix button. The type drop-down selects or disables the Dolby Atmos renderer functionality, and so Dolby Atmos renderer should be selected when connecting to the standalone Dolby Atmos renderer app. If the Dolby Atmos renderer is open and running on the same computer, the computer's name will appear in the target drop-down list. Select the local target and the connection status at the top right of the panel should change from unavailable to connected. The AES routing panel is where we can change the order of the AES outputs to make cable routing in the studio easier. AES digital audio is provided in 2-channel digital streams over a single cable, and in a stereo setup it is expected by default to connect one speaker to another in a chain. In an immersive setup, if we were to do this with left and right pairs across 16 channels, this could result in complex and untidy cable routing. To alleviate this issue, we have implemented a solution in the ORIA hardware where you can connect any speaker output to any AES channel, enabling much neater cable routing than would otherwise be possible, where one AES stream can provide audio to 2 adjacent speakers rather than using the default routing configuration. For example, it may be desirable to connect the front left and left wide speakers together in a chain. To do this, we could designate AES1 to be the front left speaker and AES2 to be the left wide speaker, as each digital AES stream is provided as an odd and even pair on a single cable. The front left speaker is already set to AES1 in this instance, but we would need to change the routing of the left wide speaker, which is set to use AES9 by default. Click the drop-down menu next to the left wide speaker, and here we can change to choose the routing to AES2. As a result of this routing, we can now also see that the front right channel, which was previously assigned to AES2, has now deselected its output, because only a single speaker can use an AES assignment at one time. ORIA handles routing the calibration and volume features internally. Make sure to test channel routing assignments after changing these settings as outlined in our quick start video. As you can see, the ORIA Desktop Software provides you with a comprehensive suite of features designed to make working with immersive intuitive, and future updates will continue to add more powerful features designed to help improve your workflow, so stay tuned for more. For more information on ORIA, including in-depth looks at calibration, hardware features, a quick start guide, and more, head over to our YouTube channel. Hit the like button if you found this video helpful, and subscribe to the channel for all things Audient. Thanks for watching, and have fun mixing immersive made easy.